schools of education at universities. There's a huge weight on the shoulders of those who are in the content courses, in those biology classrooms.
It's even more.
Yes, I would say even more, because if those students are coming out of the biology classrooms and at the college level, going into I teach science teaching methods. So I get students who have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, sometimes PhDs in all different areas of sciences. So biology, chemistry, biochemistry, geology, physics, and wanting to become science teachers. And what I often find, and this is the third institution where I've been teaching science teaching methods, so I've taught it in two other states, that often you might have a biology major who understands evolution to do well on an evolution exam in their college biology class, but not at the level where they feel really comfortable to be able to explain and teach evolution and use it as a framework in their high school biology class. And so I think that some of those teachers are avoiding teaching it because they don't understand it themselves, or because they're not sure how they're going to be able to negotiate any potential conflict, and so they avoid teaching it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The interviews I did recently, I can give you two reasons. Quote, it's too complicated and I don't get there anyway, so I don't usually get to it. And the next one was, I want to keep my job, and this is very controversial, so I'm not going to teach it at all.
Yeah, I'd like to add, if unfortunately, the people who probably have the biggest clout in terms of affecting what could happen are those who have quote-unquote standing, that is, that you have kids in school at the time, because those are the people that can actually sue the schools if they want to. You have to have standing to be able to sue the school, actually. And so, unfortunately, one of what that runs us to is that parents of kids at these ages are among the busiest people on the planet, and one of the last things that they would actually want to add to their things that they're trying to do is whether the teachers at school are in fact doing an adequate job teaching their kids science. Not only whether the parents themselves have an understanding of whether their kids are being properly taught or not. So I think it really behooves us to to watch what our kids are actually being taught in school, and it also behooves us that if there really is a problem, to find a parent to be able to stand up and make the case, because they're the ones that have the standard.
And that's the best way to get things changed in school, is by parents. It is the best way. Way better than a teacher having an issue. Yeah.
I'm a physics teacher, and so my perspective is a little bit different. I know from the history you pointed out that the starting point for the creationists was to try to keep evolution out of the schools. And a lot of progress has been made, and they kind of backed off more and more and continue to lose anyway. And I'm very pleased with the incredible work that's been done to make sure that evolution is still safe to be taught in the schools. My concern is that the creationists have similar objections to a couple of other things, like geology lessons that explain that the Earth is very old, and physics lessons that explain that the universe is very old. And they won. Although my physics textbook is 800 pages long, and it has one paragraph at the end of the last chapter about the history of the universe. Okay? So if the creationists could write a physics textbook, it would look like the one I use. And a lot of the geology doesn't get taught either. So I'm wondering, is there anything that is being done or that you see on the national scene to make progress on this front? Because it seems like the battle is on biology all the time, and it's been very successful. There's still, it's not over, as you said. But on the geology and physics side, we just seem to have given up the ghost on the whole thing. So I don't know if there's, I guess I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
Well, I would just say that, adopting textbooks is that's a separate topic. I mean, teachers have say in textbook adoption, but if you are sort of junior if you haven't been tenured in the school district for a while, you probably have less of a say. In terms of my former students who are out teaching who are given textbooks that they don't want to use for whatever reason, I tell them, that you don't have to be married to the textbook, and many teachers don't teach out of a textbook. So it might be frustrating if so one issue is textbook adoption. So I think as a teacher, you have a voice talking to the chair of your science department, to your administrators, and trying to get a textbook that, if they're out there, okay?
They
Well,
are.
I think, the question, though, I think has to do with, is cosmology and the physics standards for the state? I don't know much about physics standards.
I've taught physics a few times, and in high school, and even if it was, I don't remember it, and there's no way you could get to it in general physics in high school. I have through other readings when I've taught physics, like a Berkeley history of time, Stephen Hawking and other readings like that, but not directly from a physics book.
And in terms of earth science, physics is kind of funny anyway, because it tends to be the last course and very few students take it because, they start with, it's a layer cake, right? Biology, physics, and the leftovers get chemistry. Biology, chemistry, and if you make it that far, then very few students take physics anyway, so you get the cream of the cream, so to speak. So, yeah. And then earth science, not that many students have earth science. Yeah, you've raised a really interesting question. I'll have to look into that. Thank you for that.
So I think we're maybe laboring under a serious misconception here. I know I'm talking to a panel of educators, but do we really think that what we're teaching in school is the major influencer of what the general public believes about any issue in particular? I mean, I hate to be overly cynical about that, but is the solution to this problem not so much what goes on in the school, but what's happening on talk radio, what's happening on television, what's happening in churches? I'm interested in the question of faith science issues and how churches are communicating on these issues. And I think they have influence that perhaps challenges what happens in the schools. And if we want to see a turnaround on sort of public perception on these issues, maybe it has to happen in some of these other channels. I just wonder what you as educators all think about that.
To me, maybe it's because I'm a science teacher, but I look at it as one of the few places that we have the ability to have influence on kids and what they think. And I'm a firm believer in giving them the tools to hopefully go out there and make informed decisions, which is the buzzword and the standards often about scientific literacy. But the reality is I'm not sure how much control we're ever going to have over what goes on in their church or what goes on in some of the other places in their home. And I don't think I would ever ask to take that right away from families to teach what they believe is right. But I think it's important, again, to make it clear to kids what science is and what it isn't. Teach the true limitations of it and teach what it can do, and then really allow those kids to hopefully leave our room. And I know hopefully, because not every kid does it, but hopefully leave the room with the ability to disseminate all that information and come to at least an understanding of science, at least more in terms of what I would hope that they would walk away with. I don't personally teach evolution with the intent of being anti-religious and telling them that they can't believe other things. It's really important to me that they walk out understanding actually what evolution is, and that they actually walk out of my room realizing that evolution isn't necessarily what they've been taught, and if it isn't, they've got some new information to work with, and that's my hope. I'm not sure how much, I don't know how much control I would ever want in those other areas, but I understand what you're saying. I think it's talk about society and media and all the other things that create that. The reason we misunderstand the word theory is not because of science teachers that we can do a better job. It's because we act on TV like it's a guess. So there's a lot of other areas that we need to improve. I agree with that.
So the 45%, essentially, the 45% number for the U.S. population consists